You're listening to Skills World Live with Tom Buick. News, views and interviews in association with FE News.
Hello, welcome back. You're tuned into Skills World Live and I'm Tom Buick. And in a week when the one-party dictatorship of North Korea celebrated the 75th anniversary of the founding of the Revolutionary Workers' Party, the great leader, Kim Jong-un, was filmed weeping at his adoring and applauding crowds. Not that such affection was on show in the mother of all parliaments this week, as that other great leader, a.k.a. Gavin Williamson, got temporarily lost during education questions in the Democratic House of Commons. Speaker Lindsay Hoyle was not very impressed, forcing the Secretary of State to apologise to the Chamber for his unscheduled absence. But our own FE revolutionary leader, after his mea culpa, was in no mood for further compromise or apologising to his shadow inquisitor, Labour's Kate Green, for scrapping the Union Learning Fund. It seems those esteemed comrades over at the TUC are about as welcome in Williamson's office as the North Korean leader is at a convention on building multi-party democracy. Yeah, it's been another crazy week, folks, hasn't it just? In the world of COVID, feels like we're headed back to the spring with potentially another national lockdown looming. Hasn't stopped the British sense of humour, though, I see. Boris Johnson, our Prime Minister, now moonlighting as Bojo the Clown, came up with a novel idea of perhaps there is an upside to the government depriving us all of our most ancient liberties. After all, at least, the PM quipped, you won't have to invite the in-laws around over Christmas. Ha ha ha. And with the new tiered system of restrictions in England announced this week, at least one national newspaper was having fun, deploying a rather lame headline pun or play on words. Tears for Fears, they exulted. Not that you'll find that band sadly featuring on my playlist this evening. But do stand by though, folks, for some other Van Allen belters, including one from New Order and a classic from Fleetwood Mac. And once again, we power up my fab radio rig and connect the world of FE.
You're listening to the Skills World Live radio show with Tom Buick.
On tonight's programme, it's all about learner assessment. Yep, who said the world of pedagogy, synoptic evaluation, digital credentials and curricular design had to be boring? Because it's going to be fantastically interesting, thanks to some really great guests, including an exclusive interview with the man who was the Secretary of State for Education when I was busy failing most of my O-levels at Eton School, Nuneaton, back in 1987. I'm talking about Ken Baker, now Lord Baker, who not only introduced the country's first national curriculum, but also those famed GCSEs, which now he says should be scrapped. In the glorious phone chat segments of the show, I'll be debating a critical essay or two with contributors that want to completely rethink how we assess students, and others who can perhaps see an even happier halfway house. Stay tuned, folks, for another episode of informed chat and topical debate. But first, let's break my dulcet tones with this catchy number from Mabel. Don't Call Me Up.
When I'm underneath the bright lights, when I'm trying to have a good time, 'cause I'm good now, you ain't mine, nah, 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 nah. Don't call me up when you're looking at my photos, getting hot, losing control. You want me more, now I let go, nah, 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 nah. I'm over you and I don't need your lies no more, 'cause the truth is without you, boy, I'm stronger. And I know you said that I'd change with a cold heart, but it was your game that last, 'cause ooh, I'm over you. Don't call me up, I'm going out tonight, feeling good now you're out of my life. Don't wanna talk about us, gotta leave it behind. One drink and you're out of my mind, nah, nah, take it up. Baby, I'm on the high and you're alone, going out of your mind. But I'm here up in the club, and I don't wanna talk, so don't call me up, 'cause I'm here looking fine, babe, and I got eyes looking my way, and everybody's on my vibe, babe, nah, 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 nah. Don't call me up, my friend said you were a bad man, I should've listened to them back then, and now you're trying to hit me up again, nah, 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 nah. I'm over you and I don't need your lies Don't call me up, I'm going out tonight. Feeling good now you're out of my life. Don't wanna talk about us, gotta leave it behind. One drink and you're out of my mind. Now not to get up, baby I'm on the high and you're alone going out of your mind. But I'm here up in the club, and I don't wanna talk, so don't call me up. Don't call me up. Don't call me up, I'm going out tonight. Feeling good now you're out of my life. Don't wanna talk about us, gotta leave it behind. One drink and you're out of my mind. Now not to get up, baby I'm on the high and you're alone going out of your mind. But I'm here up in the club, and I don't wanna talk, so don't call me up.
Want to know the future of apprenticeships in England? Then you can't afford to miss this showcase online conference, The Future of Apprenticeships, Delivering the Opportunity Guarantee. Coming up on the 5th of November, join ministers, employers and sector leaders in an interactive debate. Meet with other apprenticeship training providers, endpoint assessment organisations, tutors and apprentices as we recover from the pandemic together. Importantly, find out how the changes to apprenticeships will affect you. Book your ticket today. www.futureofapprenticeships.com. That's futureofapprenticeships.com.
Just on the Future Apprenticeships Conference, presented by Skills World Live Productions, we've got some really fantastic content and speakers lined up over 5 virtual online stages. Glastonbury, eat your heart out. Instead of the rock and rollers, we've got the best sector leaders, expert headline acts from across the whole skills ecosystem, and some pretty exciting policy and ministerial input is in the works as well. Speakers are still being added, so don't think we've announced the full lineup just yet. So if you want to bag one of those early bird tickets, and quite a number of you actually have done so already, then you've got until 5 p.m. tomorrow. That's 5 p.m. tomorrow, Friday, the 16th of October, to visit futureofapprenticeships.com and purchase your heavily discounted and bargain all day digital pass. Time now to find out what's been making the news headlines in your skills world this week. The Institute for Apprenticeships and Technical Education has appointed 2 new board members this week. The Quangos board, which is currently all white, has appointed the UCAS Strategy Director, John Cope, who was previously a Conservative Party political advisor. The other appointment is Dale Bayliss, the Director of a construction consultancy firm based in East Anglia. These government appointments come at a time when there's growing concern in the sector at the decline of black and minority ethnic leaders at senior levels, including underrepresentation of ethnic minority groups on England's apprenticeship programme. In other news, the government's latest survey on employer skills training has found the lowest proportion of staff being trained in England since 2011, with 60% of employees getting support. In Wales and Northern Ireland, the survey found a slight increase in the number of employees receiving workplace training, although overall investment has also declined. Firms collectively across the UK spend nearly £40 billion on training each year, with the average employee now receiving in support around £1,500. And finally, an FE College has appointed a former RAF Air Commodore as its leader, Polly Perkins, who has just been awarded a CBE in the Queen's Birthdays Honours List, will take up her position as Principal and CEO at Brockenhurst College early in the new year. Air Commodore Perkins has served the military on deployment in Afghanistan, Kosovo and Cyprus.
Contact us at Skills World Live. We want to hear from you. Email skillsworld@fenews.co.uk. Follow us on Twitter at Skills World Live, at Tom Buick. Use the hashtag Skills World Live. Call us on 02032 900 111. That's 02032 900 111.
discovered that the show this week is getting a bit of a following in India. Yeah, that's right, India, by the look of some of my recent LinkedIn connection requests. So thank you over there for tuning in. I'm conscious also that we do cover a lot of UK-related skills stories on this show, but the editor, Gavin O'Mara, and myself are always looking to put on more international editions, indeed, as we have done so in the past. So if you're listening outside of the UK's coastal and fishing territorial waters, do drop us a line, skillsworld@fenews.co.uk. This week's thorny question is all about whether it's time to rethink learner assessment. Earlier this week, I caught up with the legendary Ken Baker. He not only had a spitting image puppet made of him in the late 1980s, I see that show's back on air, but he even had 5 teacher in-service training days named after him as well. Today, Lord Baker is a champion for all things practical learning. He's a big fan, it seems, of heretical books like those written by Matthew Crawford and David Goodhart. It seems he seems less keen, though, on fellow Conservatives and Cabinet Minister Michael Gove and his 2013 reforms to secondary education, which Lord Baker told me was almost word for word the 1904 Edwardian curriculum. I caught up with Margaret Thatcher's Education Secretary earlier this week, and I asked him straight up, why does he now want to abolish the very qualifications that he introduced himself?
Because they no longer have a purpose. They were introduced, exams at 16 were introduced way back when I took the school certificate in 1950. Because in those days, 94% of children left school for a job and only 6% went on. So they had to have a certificate showing what they'd achieved in a range of subjects, either a pass, a credit, or a distinction. And it helped them get a job. Now today, those figures are completely reversed. Only 6% at 16 go out and get a job, 94% stay on. So there's no real purpose in having an exam at 16 any longer in the education system when the school leaving age is now 18.
So is that really your central case, that the so-called widening of the participation age is now 18, therefore it makes the examination at 16 redundant? I mean, perhaps if I could just push back on a couple of things, though, you said there. I mean, clearly you pointed out that there's been a revolution in terms of the number of young people that progress compared to, for example, 1988, and indeed around about the time that I left school. 42% passed 5 GCSEs in 1988. It was 69% in 2019 and 79% actually this summer. I mean, by any stretch of the imagination, does that not demonstrate that the reforms that you kicked off all those years ago have been a real success in terms of educational attainment?
Yes, I would say it has. I think the national curriculum and all that I introduced at that time has had a beneficial effect on education enormously. And I'm not against assessing children's ability at all. And without a 16 exam, I think there should be much more examination at 14 by some tests and aptitudes of children's interests and abilities, so they can choose which vein of education they want to go on. Do they want to continue in the academic vein, or do they want a more technical vein or a more creative vein?
But wouldn't your critics say, Lord Baker, that effectively, though, you're arguing for rather than a return to the 11 plus, a sort of 14 plus, where effectively that's where young children, young adults would be asked to decide which of those pathways they are best suited to?
It's not a 14 plus. It is to determine where the interests of the children lie. What we've learned with university technical colleges, that youngsters of 13 and 14 are quite capable of deciding what they want to study and what their interests are. We've discovered that by interviewing now 10 scores of thousands of children, over 100,000 children easily by now. The country that has the lowest unemployment level in Europe is Austria. And they stop the national curriculum at 14. And then they have specialist colleges, like one for engineering, one for agriculture and forestry, one for finance, and one for logistics, etc., one for health, one for a whole range.
Yep.
And that works for them remarkably well.
It does work for Austria and indeed other Germanic countries like Switzerland and, of course, Germany with their famed apprenticeship model. All 3 of those countries, compared to the UK, send less under 30-year-olds onto university. They send more of their 16 to 20-year-olds into the apprenticeship route. All the experts that have looked at those Germanic models, whilst applauding them, as you say, for their very good fit between the world of education education and the world of work. There's something culturally, isn't there, in the English system that has prevented successive governments from adopting that kind of model, not least because there appears to be a cultural parental pressure to actually maintain GCSEs, maintain A-levels as the so-called academic gold standard. How are you going to persuade parents, who ultimately are the voters, to actually buy into your abolition of GCSEs idea?
Well, your analysis is completely correct. Every attempt to create technical education in our country since 1870 has failed because we've been dominated by an academic curriculum. The curriculum that Michael Gove imposed in 2010, which is known as EBAC and Progress 8, is word for word the curriculum of 1904, word for word.
Right.
And so the whole English education system has been dominated just by a narrow range of academic subjects. And as a result of the Gove changes in the last 10 years, design technology has all but dropped out of pre-16 education. It's dropped by 60 or 70%. There have also been drops in dance, drama of 25% and music of 25%. You're not getting the broad, balanced curriculum there ought to be. And I don't think many parents appreciate that, because the whole drive in English education since the war has been to get more children to universities. That's been a very good move. Social mobility has improved enormously. But it has created a graduate class, have a disproportionate amount of esteem, a disproportionate amount of political influence, and a disproportionate amount of reward compared to people who have to earn by their hand.
Indeed, and what you're saying there, of course, is very close to the analysis that we've got from David Goodhart in his book Head, Hand and Heart. He talks about, right. Indeed, and I've interviewed him on this programme. You know, his view is that too much power, prestige and status has gone towards the cognitive class. So if that is the case, and it does appear, perhaps this is a helpful thing actually in terms of where we are in our national debate. I mean, this is less a political football. I think there's actually more consensus these days about the analysis of where we've gone wrong in relation to the balance between academic and vocational technical education, where we've gone wrong perhaps with the balance between further education and higher education. But you talked about reforms over the last decade. I mean, are you not pleased with the London School of Economics report which has come out over the last day or so, which has actually showed that in terms of the University Technical Colleges initiative, which you have been very much associated with as a champion for that cause, whilst on the one hand actually GCSE performance at 16 is worse compared to the state sector, actually performance in terms of these technical skills, which you quite rightly are making an argument for why the country needs more of those things going forward, actually those pupils did better than their state school.
Well, with great respect, the figures are taking performance of 16 in 2016, not recently. UTCs are now enjoying a boom. We've had our largest increase in recruitment this year, 12%. We've got waiting lists for some UTCs. And we also have the best destination data of any schools in the country. Now look, in this year of crisis, we analyse what's happened to every one of our students who left in July this year. Yep. Everyone, we know what their destination is, in the middle of this great shutdown. And we only had 3% NEETs. Find me another secondary school in the country that's only had 3% NEETs this year. I don't believe there's one.
It sounds like, Lord Baker, that you're not a particular fan then of the Michael Gove reforms, but he is, of course, still a very prominent Conservative member of the government. Is he someone that you think then you're going to have to persuade if we do see a time when a manifesto pledge will come forward for the abolition of GCSEs?
I think there's a growing mood. It's quite interesting. I've been arguing now for some years that GCSEs was abolished, and at that time I think I was a lone voice. But there is now a group of Conservative MPs who've written to me saying they all agree that GCSEs should be abolished. I didn't know they existed. It was reported in the newspapers this week, and I wrote to them. I said, amazing, thank you. There's also a growing number of people. I'm a member of a group called Rethinking Assessment, very experienced people.
Yeah, I'm interviewing them on the show too.
Including the private sector as well as the public sector, public sector heads and private sector heads. And they're all unanimous in the GCSE should be changed into a different form of examination, assessment rather.
Finally, Lord Baker, what advice would you give your successor, Gavin Williamson, as Secretary of State for Education, about what to do about the examinations next year?
I would not continue to have written examinations at GCSE next year for very clear and obvious reasons, is that the brightest kids will get through. You haven't got to worry about the brightest kids in any education system. They get through. I'm worried about the disadvantaged. the 36% every year who can't get above level 4 in GCSE. Now, they've lost 3 to 4 months of education. They now have to catch up in the remaining, 25, 26 weeks before the exams. They have to catch up and not only be taught the new things as well in that time. And already there's huge absenteeism. There are today probably over 100,000 youngsters not at school because of COVID.
Yeah.
Last week, the government said the attendance rate of secondary schools is 86%, well, it should be about 96%. So you're 10% short of, you're talking of a shortage of hundreds of thousands of taught hours, probably millions of taught hours that youngsters are missing. And so you've not got a level playing field of attendance. When you've got attendance only at 86%, which is that's the government figure, you've got a massive number of young people. You don't know who they are. They're all different people in different towns, different schools, all not being taught. It's not sensible or realistic to expect schools to provide a full on-screen taught program for all absent pupils. So when you've got absent pupils, you haven't got a level playing field of attendance. And therefore, it's not fair to have an exam which is based upon a level playing field of attendance, to assume that all children assume the same number of days and weeks before the exam. Well, they don't do that. So it's grossly unfair. And I'm almost certain that they won't happen, because as this becomes more apparent, the government has got to produce a plan B, and they're going to produce a plan B by Christmas, to allow for some sort of coursework assessment or teacher assessment or mock exams as a fallback. And the fallback, I'm sure, will become what will happen next year.
As you say, lots of challenges in the education system dealing with this pandemic. Pleasure to talk to you, Lord Baker, who was Secretary of State. Yes, indeed. You were Secretary of State under Margaret Thatcher's government. It's a pleasure that you've come on the programme. Thank you again.
You're listening to the Skills World Live radio show with Tom Buick.
Just wait till tomorrow. I guess that's what they all say. Just be a fool before
That's one of my favourite electronic bands, New Order. And of course, Regret, or Je ne regrette rien, as President Macron might say about his threat to veto a post-Brexit trade deal. And I may well regret telling you this, folks, but for those of you with an Apple iTunes account, you can now view and play all the show's weekly playlists by accessing them for free online. Just search Tom Buick in your iTunes library. To kick off tonight's live phone chat debate on the subject of, is it time to rethink learner assessment? It's great now to be joined live on the line by Alistair McConville, who's Director of Learning and Innovation at the Bedale School. Good evening, Alistair.
Good evening.
And Bill Watkin, CEO at Sixth Form Colleges Association. Good evening to you, Bill.
Hello, Tom.
And finally, Charlotte Bosworth, Managing Director at Innovate Awarding. Hi, Charlotte.
Hi, evening, Tom.
Evening. It is nearly evening, isn't it? Thanks all three of you for joining us on Skills World Live. Alistair, let's kick off tonight's debate then with you as one of the key figures behind the Rethinking Assessment movement. Tell our listeners in a nutshell how assessment for students would be different if your plans were implemented.
Well, really, the thing that unites our group is a sense that there needs to be a sensible, evidence-informed discussion about how to change the 11 to 18 assessment regime. That isn't going to happen overnight. But the thing that really sort of attracts our collective ire is the pretty unpleasant GCSE experience that's narrow, that's graded unreliably, and which we don't think really develops the kind of breadth of skills that young people are going to need to go on to the next stage. So whilst we don't have a sort of oven-ready solution, to use that awful expression, we do want to get cracking on one, and for there to be an acknowledgement that really the 9 GCSE diet is something from the past that's been, in our view, made worse by the Govian reforms, and that it's time for adults to get cracking on a better 21st century solution.
Okay, well, I'm sure we'll get tucked into that 9 GCSE diet during this debate. But Bill, like a lot of us in education, you've had a busy summer dealing with the exams crisis, with all the fallout, of course, that Alistair just mentioned there, which was brought in terms of the initial impact on learners. And now, arguably, the future of the system itself. Given the fallback this time on purely centre-assessed grades, how fair is it, in your opinion, on next summer's students who probably won't get anything like the same level of grade inflation?
I think one of the challenges is to learn the lessons from 2020, to try and work out what we can do to develop the least unpalatable option for 2021. And I think, as Alistair says, it's very difficult to come up with an oven-ready solution. It's quite easy to say what doesn't work. It's much harder to say what would work. Of course, if we hadn't gone linear a few years ago following the 2010 reforms, we'd be in a slightly different position now. And it's strange that we went linear at A level at the same time as universities were going modular in higher education. So it's a regret to me that we did that. I think one of the things that we need to be conscious of is something that you raised in your interview with Lord Baker, and that's the need to address our cultural attachment to grades, exam grades. So we, for example, after the problems in this summer, we've been dealing with the story of a young lad who got a C in his chemistry A level, got into his first choice university, felt he should have got an A, and he's been fighting tooth and nail to get his C changed to an A, even though he got into his destination of choice, his first choice. Right. So we need to deal with that.
Indeed. I mean, there's obviously a lot of sense of injustice of aspects of the summer. It's one of the things I'm sure that weighed heavily on Gavin Williamson's mind when he made that famous U-turn back in August. Charlotte, you've worked for large exam boards and you've seen how different assessment models can work, for example, in apprenticeships through your work at Innovate Awards. Do you think Ken Baker is right, though? GCSEs have to go?
Absolutely not. So I clearly do respect Lord Baker's opinion, but what we mustn't forget, and it's back to your point around the parts of the system I've seen, is 16 is a huge chance and opportunity for students to make a decision of what their pathway and progression is. And that isn't, say, going on to A-levels and university. You know, there's great opportunities out there with apprenticeships as well. And we mustn't forget that actually is a key opportunity for them to make that choice. So I believe that, you know, we definitely should have some form of system that is in place to actually look at their academic and intelligence at that point. Now, I agree with the points that both Alistair and Bill have also made is, you know, that shouldn't just be the only measure. And it's really, really difficult to get the full scope of a student's ability. But the fact remains, we do need at least some form of system. Otherwise, I can't see that the academic system will work.
Yeah, and apologies there. Your mobile connection was a bit muffled for a while, but it's much clearer now. Alistair, I mean, do you think there is a sort of halfway house between the abolition of sort of GCSEs argument and actually just looking again at the whole way in which we do assess the upper secondary phase? I mean, Bill, I think in his answer also alluded to this about, you know, there's been this back and forth between kind of modular, coursework based, then to linear, terminal assessment. You know, I won't bore our listeners with all the different terminology, but is there a happy halfway house?
Yeah, up to a point. So I have no objection with the idea of mastering a body of knowledge and having some form of assessment that shows that you've done that. And there is absolutely a place for testing and some examination. So the thing that I think my group is arguing for is some kind of slightly more sophisticated and broad range of assessment tools to measure not only the ability to show your mastery of a subject in very tight time conditions in an exam hall with a pen, but also to be able to present orally or to develop coursework over a period of time. So some of the things that actually used to be in GCSEs, the chance to be credited for speaking and the chance to be credited for extended writing at your own pace, those things have disappeared. And there was a form of sort of trial GCSE, what they were called Mode 2 or Mode 3 GCSEs, I forget the term, that looked really promising because they were trying to broaden the way in which a child's intelligence and achievement was reported on. So something perhaps that moves back towards that, and that isn't one time only. I don't think there's any reason why it should all hang on a narrow number of days in June when you're 16, sure. And that you can't accumulate a kind of set of micro-credentials over time that show where you've got to so that you can make those important choices, whether it's at 16 or earlier. I absolutely agree that you need evidence to make those choices.
Sure. I mean, I get that. And look, I mean, in my own experience, you know, I quipped about the fact I failed most of my O-levels. I was just hopeless at sort of turning up on the day and pulling it off, notwithstanding, obviously, my pretty poor revision schedule. So, I mean, I get this point about leaving it all to the end. But is that really it? Is it about the fact that we just need to assess this body of knowledge and mastery, as you call it, in different ways? But I mean, I take from you, Alistair, and perhaps you also, Bill, you're not against, are you, the idea of some external moderation, validation of that body of knowledge? Bill, can you just come in on that?
Yeah, I actually, no, I'm not at all. And I'm focused very much at the moment on the talk about contingencies for 21 and what we're going to do. And they bring into focus, it seems to me, this argument about whether exams are the right kind of assessment or not. And at the moment, as things stand, exams probably are the right way of assessing young people, because when we talk about the alternatives to exams, and I'm talking short term, not long term here, all the contingencies that are being discussed have their own inbuilt inequalities and problems, whether that's optionality, students choosing which questions or centres choosing which questions. There's mock exams, ongoing assessments, comparable outcomes. All these sorts of things are a way of presenting an alternative to exams, none of which are as likely to be as well received as exams themselves.
Okay, just turning briefly now then, last question. Charlotte, exams next year, obviously Secretary of State's committed to those exams going ahead, of course, consulting on the detail as we speak. Lord Baker wasn't convinced that the Plan A will indeed be the one that ultimately we follow with all these restrictions around COVID. Do you think the exams will go ahead? And if they do, is it the fairest way of assessing students?
I mean, I think, we all recognise that the examinations this year were very different and had to be due to the situation that we found ourselves in. I think what we need to continue to do is say what is the most fair way of us actually measuring the outcomes of those young people.
Yeah.
I think we do need to continue to have some kind of standardisation independently and nationally to actually retain the credibility of those examinations and allow young people to actually get the credit for the learning and the effort they put in, even if that has been over a kind of difficult, challenging period within their education.
Okay, Charlotte Bosworth, Managing Director at Innovate Awarding, Bill Watkins, CEO at Sixth Form Colleges Association, Alistair McConville, Director of Learning and Innovation at the Bedale School. Thank you to all of you for joining the show this evening.
Thank you very much.
You're listening to the Skills World Live radio show with Tom Buick.
How could you not recognise that 1970s classic, Fleetwood Mac and Dreams? I see the modern day TikTok has gone rather mad for that Mac song recently. Did you hear that story about the skateboarder Nathan Apodaca from Idaho in the United States, who posted himself on the app lip-syncing to that very Dreams track while sipping on a cranberry juice? I do wonder, though, whether there was a cheeky vodka in there. Anyway, thanks to TikTok, Nathan has had 41 million views, helping top up, I'm sure, the pension pots of those surviving band members of Fleetwood Mac. Let's now commence tonight's final live phone chat segment, shall we? Joining us up until the end of the show is Professor Bill Lucas, who's the Professor of Learning and a Director of the Centre for Real World Learning. Love that title. At the University of Winchester. Good evening, Bill.
Hi there.
Great to have you on. And a regular contributor. Yeah, great to get you on. And over now to a regular contributor to Skills World Live. We love getting her on. Sally Dickett's Chief Executive Officer at Activate Learning and, of course, the President this year of the Association of Colleges. Good evening, Sally.
Hi, and welcome to everyone.
Indeed, including those listening in India, apparently.
Yes.
Now, Sally, let's kick off the discussion with you. I recall you saying last time you were on the show that employers were not looking for students who could simply write an essay, but other more practical skills. Do you not feel, though, that making students write essays and pass high-pressure exams gives them some semblance of real-world experience of what work pressures feel like, as well as having to communicate in a structured and reasoned way? Why are you so against essays?
Well, I think if that was the case, I would challenge, why do so many young people who've got great A-levels, great degrees, why are they having mental breakdowns at work when they've been so well prepared by our examination system?
It's that snowflake generation, though.
Yeah, and I think that's because of the absolute focus on exam results, and now because so many people actually go to higher education. In my day, if you got an A and 2 Bs, you were going to some amazing universities. Now you need A stars and A's to get anywhere, and I think the pressures are now ridiculous. I don't know about you, but I don't sit in my office writing essays in a time constraint. I think you have time constraints, and I think there's much better ways of assessing. So the question to me is, why did we ever start having assessment in the first place? Because assessment was for feedback. And when we had one-to-one apprenticeships or tutoring, you did it personally, and you actually explained to somebody what they needed to do in order to improve their performance. It was only with mass education that we came up with the essay, and the essay, as Kenneth Baker alluded to, is for going to university. Yeah. Why do employers use it? It's partly laziness, and most employers now are using competency and personality as well as skills. So I think the system is anarchic, out of date, and is not fit for purpose. And the whole point of the purpose for assessment is it should be fit for purpose.
Well, let's explore what that fit for purpose looks like then. Bill, you've written so many amazing books on the future of learning and how the human mind works. It's actually hard for me to know where to begin in terms of asking you a really good question. So let's try this. Are there any redeeming features of the current way we assess students in upper secondary education that you would keep?
Yeah, I'd keep the passion that great teachers bring to their subjects, despite the sometimes limiting horizons of the particular assessment regime. I'd bring the extraordinary ways in which some of these exams can be used. I mean, I think, for example, of the extended project qualification, which seems to me an absolutely superb example of the kind of thing we might be going for. And it has a GCSE equivalent, not quite so well known, but sadly looks like it may be moving out of favour. I think the thing that we will have to think about is, and a number of people have been calling for this on our Rethinking Assessment site, John Dunford has a very thoughtful blog. We need to upskill teachers as exam assessors and moderators. And I think if we could get away from the overly, exactly as Sally is suggesting, this overly judgmental failure mentality through to asking the question, can we get better and can teachers get better at tracking the development of whatever it is they want to develop. Now, I don't actually have anything, I'm a writer, so unsurprisingly I like essays, but with Sally, I think writing an essay, well, actually it's not even an essay, my youngest kids have been through GCSE, and they talk about a 5 marker, or a 10 marker, or a 15 marker, and there's never even a chance to extend a full argument of the kind that you might do if you were thinking essay equals really good piece on a news website. So I think there are some good things. I think if you looked outside of the English system and took yourself on a walk across the world, you'd see wonderful consortia beginning to be put together in the States. You'd see in Australia really imaginative ways of using online testing, so the best of the gaming and badging and digital badging and portfolios. So there is no shortage of good stuff out there, and there are hints of it within the current system. But unfortunately, it just is anachronistic. It was invented when education finished at 16, and it doesn't anymore, or it shouldn't. I know there are gaps for some kids at 16 plus.
Yeah, well, that was sort of Ken Baker's point as well, even though obviously he was the guy that brought in GCSEs in 1988. But both of you then, I mean, this sort of tension that I detect in the system between, on the one hand, I mean, you're absolutely right, Bill, there's all this innovation now around assessment. You know, there are many wonderful ways in which that body of mastery and skill can be assessed, not least if it is related to the real world of work. It can be assessed in a very competency-based way. Yeah. But nevertheless, in the upper secondary system, I still detect this tension between what you might call the accountability mechanism that arguably, obviously the politicians want it, but you know, they're responding also to voters as parents, who kind of perhaps like the idea that their offspring are pitted against other children at the same age, at the same stage of learning, and they can therefore see the relative performance, not just of their individual children and young people, but also the schooling system itself. And let's not forget, both the private sector in this country and the state sector use GCSEs. So how do we get around that issue of somehow parents feeling shortchanged if assessment is just back to the sort of 1970s view of a secret garden? What do you think, Sally?
Again, I go back to the question, what is assessment for? So if what we're saying is assessment is for a league table, and I'll take my daughter, I can see that my daughter's done brilliantly because she's got 10 GCSEs 9. That's fantastic. That's one thing.
Yeah, be proud of that.
But why does everybody go to university? Is it merely as a finishing school for the middle class, or is it our belief that the quality of employment and the quality of life we get is better? So if overnight you said to the population, if you go to, as I'm sitting in Oxford, go to Oxford University and you will never get a good job. You'll be an academic, but no employer will take you. I don't think it would be quite as popular as it is now. Oxford University guarantees you a great job. If qualifications for parents are about great employment, then I think does this qualification get you great employment? And at the moment, GCSEs, A-levels and universities do. I think with more and more people going on to university, more and more employers finding that is not the best way to sift through, what's going to happen then? The GCSE doesn't fulfill its aim. So I go back to, what is its purpose? If the purpose is for showing competency, if I take anything we do in a college with 16-year-olds, which is vocational, do you want an amazing plumber? Or do you want somebody that can write an amazing essay about what they should be doing in plumbing? I'd rather the former than the latter. So I would go back to basics.
Okay. All right. Back to basics, Bill. It's all about direct line of sight to a job. I mean, you're at the University of Winchester. King Alfred famously, of course, founded England's sort of learning system in many ways. He was a great scholar. It sounds very utilitarian to me, what Sally's saying about the purpose of assessment. Do you not think?
Well, I heard Sally saying that the purpose of assessment is to help you figure out whether you're going in the direction you want to get to, and then help your talented teacher or peers around you to help you do that. And I mean, going back to your question, I mean, in the 19th century, we sat kids according to their position in the class, and it was very visible where they were and whether, occasionally we put dunces hats on them. Fast forward today, and we have the lazy equivalent of the leap people. And of course, teachers need some kind of shorthand for how their kids are doing. But I don't think that shorthand needs to be an exam system called GCSE that has an inbuilt 33% or thereabouts failure rate. I just don't think that's kind. And I think in the current situation, I think it's close to being immoral. And that's even before I've got going on all the things it doesn't tell you. And fascinating piece in the Daily Telegraph online today about somebody who you might not expect to be an advocate of this kind of cause, saying, at last, I can look at a school and really understand what it is offering my kids rather than fretting about the GCSE results. So I think, we shouldn't, by the way, we're just doing some polling on parent views, and parents don't instinctively support the status quo on this one. So
right.
Let's watch this space. But I wouldn't want the message to be left that we're simply against something. In the Rethinking Assessment movement, we're absolutely for some things of the kind that Sally's been talking. And we want to bring the best that's been done successfully or in prototype form across the world. We want to bring it to England. And actually in England, we want to learn about what the other three home nations are doing. I think we've become super insular. See?
One of the questions, Tom, I'd like to ask is, when somebody, if they came to you, said they'd got 5 GCSEs, English, biology, whatever, what does it tell you that they can do?
Well, look, I mean, I'll be absolutely honest with you. Over the years as an employer, I just briefly look over the education section in the CVs. I always look at first and foremost their employment record, where they've worked, what kind of companies they've worked for. Obviously, when you're setting the interviews, it's all about give us real-world examples of how you've dealt with challenges and problems. I mean, that's how, as an employer, I've always assessed the merit of an individual candidate applying for a job. Obviously, there are other tools depending on the seniority of the role that you can undertake, and there are good assessment methods out there which through headhunters, for example, you can deploy. So the academic subjects per se have never particularly knocked me over, and certainly never been a deciding factor. But again, all the research though shows, does it not, or certainly until recently, that employers have used GCSEs and A-levels and the grades as a sifting mechanism when they receive the CVs, particularly in high volumes. Probably not going to get too many. They will get a lot of those, with the current unemployment challenge. So it's a sifting mechanism, isn't it? That's what exams have been used for.
And if you abolish GCSEs tomorrow and every young person in every school did BTEC X, suddenly BTECs would become the sifting. The only reason why GCSEs are the sifting mechanism is the majority of young people do them. If you replace them with something else, that will become what employers or universities use as a sifting mechanism. So GCSEs aren't perfect. They're just what's there, and that's what we use.
Yeah, I think
and
the
it's very
experience
interesting on that theme.
Yeah, go on, Bill.
On that theme, Tom, it's very interesting that if you look at what, say, the World Economic Forum is asking for, they're the kind of things you've been talking about: creativity, critical thinking, communication, high-level problem solving. So from the demand side, we're actually wrongly providing the things that employers say they want. If you then go to higher education and those who run further education and ask them what they want a whole set of other capabilities and competencies. And so you could say it becomes almost perverse to run a system that doesn't intelligently try to track the development of those things. PISA did that in 2015 when it looked at collaborative problem solving. I'm engaged with them now, looking at creative thinking for what was to have been 2021 will now be 2022. So, the world is moving around us. And I think, dare I say it, England is in the slow lane here.
Alas, I could talk to you guys all night, but I would definitely fail the assessment set for me by Gavin O'Mara every Thursday, which is to try and run this show to time, which has to finish at the top of the hour. But Professor Bill Lucas at the University of Winchester and Sally Dickett of Activate Learning, great to have you back on. See you soon.
Great to see you, or rather great to see you.
You're listening to the Skills World Live radio show with Tom Buick.
Is it me, or these weekly live shows just flying by ever quicker and quicker? Must be all that fun I'm having, clearly. And I really do enjoy spending this hour with you every week. So do subscribe, folks, to Skills World Live. You can go to fenews.co.uk, or indeed just hit subscribe at one of your favourite podcasting sites. We've got some great future guests lined up and in-depth interviews, including the new interim chief regulator at Ofqual, Dame Glenys Stacey. She's talking to me next week. She's been on Desert Island Disc, you know. Thanks again to the whole Skills World Live crew, particularly the show's editor Gavin O'Mara and our Fleetwood Mac-loving digital producer Ellie Hansen. Let's play out now with this new release from Trance Wax. It's the kind of track, if I wasn't the long-retired former clubbing DJ Van Allen, it would definitely be on this weekend's 4am set list. I'm going to go and make you folks listen to it instead. Oh, what punishment. Thanks again for tuning in. Stay safe, everyone. I'll see you next week.
Remember to subscribe to Skills World Live at fenews.co.uk or just download the show from any one of your favourite podcasting sites, including iTunes, Spotify and Spreaker. Your world, Skills World.